going on, everybody? This is Matt. I just wanted to take some time to welcome you guys to the first episode of Me and My House podcast. Just to let you guys know just a little bit about ourselves and what we're doing here. Me and my wife, Wendy Deloach, we wanted to give you guys some content, some really good content, we feel, and just give you an opportunity to hear our hearts, hear our minds, and see what we think on different types of topics. First and foremost, we just want to make sure that everybody understands, so it's not twisted, that we are firm and faithful believers in Jesus Christ, and that we want to keep the integrity of what he brings to our lives, and hopefully what he can bring to your lives in the future. So once again, this is Me and My House podcast, and we appreciate you for tuning in. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to an episode of Me and My House podcast. My name is Matt Deloach, and my lovely wife is sitting across the table from me. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Wendy Deloach.
Okay, that was awkward. Anyways, we wanted to start this podcast all because we have wonderful conversation, and we felt like, let's do a podcast. These are podcast-worthy conversations that we have, and we felt like these conversations could really edify and lift people up, and they could be thought-provoking and start up conversations in everybody else's homes and within their marriages as well. So pretty much Me and My House is just us in our house, living life as it is, talking as it is. Pretty much, if you didn't hear it in the intro, here it is. This is real, raw, and uncut. Like, there's going to be some things that might offend people that we say, but we try to do it within good taste. We are definitely believers and firm believers in Jesus Christ. There's a lot of milk to meat conversations that we have here. So if you can't handle that, hey, maybe this ain't the place for you. Wendy, how you feel about that? Any thoughts? Anything you'd like to add?
I feel like that's accurate. I feel like there's so much that goes on behind the doors of everyone's home and behind the appearance that we all put out to people on Sunday mornings. And I think that there's just a lot of transparency that we have to have with each other if we're going to truly get through all this.
Well said. That's why I married her. And people thought I married her for a credit score. Okay, so during this whole quarantine, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we, felt a little stir crazy being in the house.
And had to escape.
And when I say we, I mean Wendy. So we hopped in the car and we went for a drive. And since I'm an essential employee, if we got stopped or whatever, I was going to flash my joint and be like, yo, I'm essential. Don't know if it was going to work like that, but hey, that's what we were going to do. And as we were driving, we had stumbled across some things. And Wendy, why don't you go ahead and elaborate on what that was?
Well, I'm not always the most organized. And if anyone at FAM is listening, I'm sorry that this was in my car 2 or 3 years later. But we came across some material that we were given at a marriage retreat. Booklets, and as I'm looking through it, it reminded me of where we were in our marriage at that point and where we've come. Although, we're just now inching up on 4 years married later this year.
Woo-woo.
And at that first stage in a marriage, those first 5 years, first 7 years, they're so critical to the foundation of what is so far to come. It got us talking about different situations and different things that, couples really struggle to get through. And without grace, without, Christ, without that gravity to hold us together, and without faith, how do you get through it? And one of those topics that was up for discussion is
sensitive waters.
Is indiscretions.
Whew.
Best way to say it, because indiscretions can cover such a variety of betrayals, offenses, sins, however you want to look at it.
For that Message Bible translations, we talking about infidelity, lies, the whole nine.
Social cheating, emotional, just a detachment.
Wow.
And a point to where you get to in your feelings, whether it's on the woman's side or the man's side, where you just don't feel like expressing your emotions. So therefore, you're expecting your partner to know how you feel when you haven't even told them.
Heads up, ladies, for those of you who didn't know, and y'all probably do know because you're like all knowing, guys are not mind readers. So you have to let us know what's going on.
But we want you to be.
That's a tall glass of water. So you have to let us know what's going on. And guys, if you're not a mind reader by now, you're an idiot. Practice. Go get a 3rd-degree black belt in it from somewhere and learn how to be a mind reader.
But I'll say this to men, because my husband so gently put out a warning to all the women. I'll say, men, take the time to study your wife. Learn her and learn her emotions and her demeanor, and try your best to understand when she's really not okay.
Yeah. And by no means am I saying like I've got that all under control. The biggest reason why we felt the need to start this podcast is to also like be able to talk about and be open with like some of the things that we're struggling with, sometimes some of the things that we fight about. Because I'm learning, wow, that was a sharp. What I'm learning currently is how to be a friend to my wife and learning how to fight fair, learning how to just say what I mean, and taking ownership and being responsible for my actions. That's probably the hardest thing I've had to do as of yet. But, don't want to go down that road too far. We can get into that into another episode. But Wendy, like you were saying, as far as the material that we picked up and sparking that conversation, I think you were able to start that off very well. So go on ahead with that.
If you've been in a relationship for any length of time, you understand, or you're at least beginning to understand, that there's so many things that could derail a relationship if you're not solid, or once you start thinking about yourself or your own needs. And, at any point in time in a relationship, there's going to be moments where you might feel neglected or overlooked or underappreciated. And one thing that we were actually just talking about was social media praise and recognition. And in this day and time, we all live our lives so much on social media out there for the public to see. We almost forget that we have our own life behind closed doors because we're so much out there.
We've been social distancing before COVID.
So one thing, and like I said, I'll talk about it. I'll put myself out there. I actually shared, last night with Matt that it took me a while in the beginning to be comfortable and to understand that just because he didn't post about me on his Instagram or on his Facebook, that didn't mean that he didn't appreciate me. However, I will admit that there was a point in time, an extended period of time, where it made me feel like, well, maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he doesn't appreciate. Well, what if he doesn't notice that I did this or whatever it might be, because I wasn't getting that hashtag or that, tag a friend or that picture posted or whatever it might be. However, it took me some time to learn and to understand that was just not his style. Didn't mean that it had anything personal to do with me.
Right. I'm a very private person by nature. So for me to put my personal stuff out there, even to that extent, because there's a lot of people out there that act like that's not even that personal. To me, that is, because at this point, I'm allowing you into my real life. And I don't like to do that with everybody, especially with people I don't even know, because you'll frivolously, Lord Jesus, y'all please forgive me with that, just add people online. People that you don't even know. You'll just add them just because they live in your city. And you're like, oh, I got to get my friend count up. I'm not going to just share that personal piece of my life with just everybody. I don't even like doing that with my kids. So it's like, I'm not going to do that. You know what I'm saying? So
but ladies admit it, and men too, if you feel the need for that social recognition, it's kind of like social media public displays of affection, because then there are different couples or different people, whether it's a matter of just that constant showering of attention toward each other, or an image of your life that really isn't accurate. We all know that the image that people portray on their feeds, on their news feeds, or wherever it is, it's this perfect picture, but that's just a corner of your kitchen.
People show you what they want to show you.
That's a corner of the kitchen that you just refinished. Forget the mess with the cabinets all torn apart that isn't done. So, but it's easy to begin to feel alone in the relationship and neglected and not worth it when you allow things like that to become important to you over communicating with your spouse, communicating with, your husband, ladies, that, this is important to me. And honestly, giving him an opportunity to express to you why he maybe just don't understand that. Like, he don't understand why that means so much to you. Why do you care if I tag you? Why do you care if it's been 6 months since I said something about you on Facebook?
Nah, we ain't had that conversation. So for all y'all nosy folks, don't sit there and think that's a conversation we had.
No, it isn't. But I know it's something that goes through people's minds, because like I said, that did go through my mind earlier on in our relationship. But as I studied my husband and what he shared, and just the continuous content, it spoke to me to say, okay, just because he's not putting me out there doesn't mean that he's not thinking about me.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, because for me, I appreciate Wendy for everything, and I truly love this woman, and I don't feel like I need. Best example I can give for this is there are that percentage of married people out there that feel like they don't need a marriage license to solidify their marriage or put a stamp on it. They feel like if they are committed to each other and they want to call themselves married, they're married. And that token, I don't need Facebook. I don't need social media. And I don't need a bunch of likes on a picture of my wife to show and validate that I love her and that I appreciate her. I feel like me living everyday life and doing the things that I need to do as a husband should show that. I shouldn't have to put that on social media. So that's where I kind of stand with things like that. So with that being said, my question to you is, what do you think causes people to quit and give up? Because I know for me personally, when I look at, my family history and I look at my grandfather and my grandmother, I don't know the full story. I just know that my grandfather didn't want my grandmother anymore. And he felt like, I'm going to go over here, and left this amazing woman and chased after this other lady who later became his wife. And it almost felt like growing up. Okay, I lied. It definitely felt like growing up, and I didn't realize it until I got older, that he didn't care about the first family he had. He didn't care about the grandchildren he had from that family, let alone his own kids. I remember my grandfather coming to one birthday of mine as a kid, and I always visited my grandmother in her hometown all the time, and I didn't realize until I got much, much older, my grandfather was 15 minutes away and made no effort to come and see me over there. And this was after they were on good speaking terms. Made no effort to come and see me. And we always had to go to him. So with all that, sorry guys, didn't mean to get too deep into it, but what do you think would make people want to give up, especially now? Because I know you see it so much, especially in this generation. There's so many people who get married, and they get married young. They get married hella young. And I don't want to say age has anything to do with it because I married you at the age of 21. But
age and maturity are different.
whoo, I've put away those childish things. I am no longer a boy. That's scripture. But we see people getting married super, super young, and then the marriage ends within like a year or so. Well, like, what do you think makes people like want to give up so easily?
Depending on the couple, depending on the person, I feel like it's a number of things. It could be the need or the expectation for instant gratification. We just talked a few minutes ago about the social media world that we're in. You put up a picture, you immediately get likes. You put up a post, you want people to share it. You know, you send a Snapchat, you immediately get one back.
Yeah.
So here you go into a marriage, and babe, we've been together, going on 6 years.
Yeah.
There's still so much we're learning about each other.
Yeah.
We're still learning how to communicate. I'm still learning what's important to you. And I feel like you're still learning how I operate, how my mind works.
Yeah.
So you take a couple that's been married a year, 2 years, whatever it might be, and he stops giving her flowers and he stops sending her notes, and her instant gratification isn't being met anymore. And so therefore, when her instant gratification isn't being met, she gets discouraged. And then she feels like, well, he should already know, so I'm not going to talk to him about this because I just expect that he's going to know.
So do you think that's like just a lack of trying to understand one another?
I think that's a lot of this, and I'm holding up a phone, and I think it's a lot of interruptions that we allow into our life. And I think that it is so critical, and I can say that from recent personal experience on how important it is to truly take one night every month. I mean, everybody's situation is different, whether you have kids, whether you don't, how many, what your job schedules are, but you have to commit to take that time, whatever it might be that you've agreed upon, to refocus on yourself and your spouse. Because without that, all of the distractions get louder than your commitment. And when your distractions are louder than your commitment, it's easy to go rogue.
It's crazy because you saying that, like, distractions and allowing, allowing your commitment to be bigger than your distractions and stuff like that. It made me think about, I was watching Andy Mineo on Instagram, and Andy Mineo, guys, is like one of my favorite rappers. He's definitely my favorite artist, period.
Period.
But Andy was talking about sometimes with him, and him being an artist and being such a well-known artist, he's very, very busy. Obviously, without the COVID-19 restraints, he's constantly on the road, constantly in the studio, and there's very little time spent with him and his wife. And he even talked about, like, having to, like, sit down, like him and his wife forcing some time to sit down. Like, they'll put it in their calendar. This day is specifically designed for us to sit down and then map out the next 4 weekends for us to spend with each other.
Of date nights, because you have the idea, but if you don't plan it, it's just talk.
Yeah, I think it was called a plan to plan. And that's what they named that day. It's our plan to plan day. Like, we're going to sit down and we're going to plan out these days, and we're going to plan out what type of dates we want to go on, and we're going to make these dates happen because we're so busy, because, and shout out to Christina Mineo. I don't think y'all ever listen to this, but if you do, I love y'all. Shout out to her because, she's super, super busy doing hair, doing all types of stuff. And so when you have somebody who's in high demand in that arena, and then you have somebody like Andy who is constantly busy, you have to have a plan to plan. And so I think that was.
But don't take it too far, though, because in that scenario, you're saying this person that has this amount of notoriety, and this person who has this amount of notoriety. The everyday average couple allows the same amount of distractions to make them feel just as pulled and just as busy. So just because you're not working 3 jobs, and just because your husband isn't, on the road touring all the time, doesn't mean that you don't need to focus that time to remember, okay, this is about you and me, without the kids, without work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that right there is a big thing because I know for me, if I'm not making the conscientious, Lord, guys, listen, I'm done trying to say big words that I can't say. My tongue won't allow me to say it. But I know if I make a conscious effort to try to plan a date with my wife, then at that point, I made it a big deal to her. I've obviously made it a big deal to me. Now we have to do it. And I want to do those things not because I feel obligated, but because I want to continue the relationship. I want to continue the friendship. You know, somebody told me before we started really going down this thing, and literally right before we got married, I remember somebody telling me, like, don't stop dating your wife. Like, don't. Like, just don't stop dating your wife. You are constantly dating your wife. If you think it has ended now because you're going to throw a ring on that finger, you are sadly mistaken.
But there are things that change because we get to a point of comfort. There are things that get altered. And some of it is good and for the better, and some of it one partner might feel okay with, but the other might not. I do believe that some degree of change is normal, and in your lives, you don't maybe have the time to date 3 nights a week anymore like you did when you were, in the early honeymoon phase. But without it, again, I say that, when distractions get bigger than your commitment, you feel, whether it's the woman or the man, you feel like it's not worth it. And when you get to a point of feeling like it's not worth it, you don't even want to have the fight anymore. You don't want to have the conversation anymore. You're just exhausted. So you start looking to get that fulfillment or that recognition or that praise somewhere else, whether that be I start a YouTube channel, whether that be I start talking to people at work a little longer and not coming home right away after work, whatever it looks like, you start looking for that somewhere else.
The biggest thing that I have seen is people, and I mean, I guess not the biggest thing that I've seen because it's not like I just discovered this beautiful thing. It's the most popular thing that I have noticed, and especially after we got married, I've noticed this with a lot of couples is people will go looking for that through another partner, and that's where the infidelity that I was talking about earlier kind of creeps in, where excuse me, where you said that you don't want to, you don't want to have this fight, you don't want to have this conversation anymore, and then that thought creeps in your mind, I'm gonna go to somebody where I don't even have to worry about having this conversation with.
Someone I don't fight with. Someone who listens to me.
And when I say business, y'all know what I mean. Hide your kids. The sex, obviously. Once it gets that bogged down or the stress, then you're like, I'm not trying to hear this no more. Like, I'm gonna go call up Shawty because I know she ain't gonna ask no questions. Like, there ain't gonna be no talking. And that is a very dark place because at that point, once something like that strikes up, whether it be somebody that you just met or somebody that you just like rekindled an old flame with, or somebody that you might have been talking to for a while, the fact still remains is that you have been in a place like that for a minute in your heart to where you could even consider going to somebody else. You've been in that spot in your heart of thinking about what if I was with somebody else before you even made the move to be with somebody else.
Yeah, you don't wake up and decide I'm going to go cheat on my spouse today.
There's a line that you had mentioned the other night from a song that KB, which is another artist that I love. Y'all, if y'all know KB, then you know he is like the greatest Christian hip hop artist right now, probably of all time.
Period.
Sorry, Andy, I love you, but KB got it. And KB's got a song called The Art of Drifting. And in that song, KB says this line. He said, nobody wakes up addicted. Every great fall is from 100 bad decisions. And so you don't just wake up saying, I'm going to go cheat on my wife or I'm going to go cheat on my husband. Like, it starts in your heart. Mm-hmm. And the moment it gets into your heart, it's going to come out. Like the Bible says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth will speak. Well, it's not just your mouth either. So once it has that resting place in your heart, if you don't try to eliminate that, if you don't even try to fight that, like it's going to come out, period. And it can come out in the form of I'm saying these things to my spouse, like I want to be with somebody else. I am physically attracted to somebody else. It could come out into the form of I'm going to watch porn and this is what I'm going to subject myself to. Or it could move even further into I'm going to go sleep with this person. And I don't care how my spouse feels about it. Which once it hits that point, you know, it's hard to come out of that. It's not impossible, but it's very, very hard to come out of that when you, especially when it's in your heart, like I said it was, you can't listen to your heart all the time. Our pastor, Pastor John at Fam Church, you know, he's like, don't listen to your heart. Your heart will fool you.
It sure will.
Don't do that. You got to listen to your mind, and it'll make sense to you. It might not be something that you want to do.
Let me say this, and I got to say it before it leaves, because once it leaves, then it's gone. You know, you mentioned Pastor John. Shout out to John White. And something else that he spoke about, and I remember it fairly recently. Problems happen in your marriage, okay, when you stop having sex with your spouse.
Wow.
Why are you arguing over dishes? Why are you tempted to look at that girl on Instagram?
Talk to him.
Why are you tempted to open that what do you call it, a DM and talk to this guy that you haven't talked to in years because he checked in to see how you're doing?
Not the DMs.
So how do you safeguard your marriage? And I will say a disclaimer, okay, there are things that happen. There are tired people. There are overworked people. You have piles of tasks to do. So I'm not saying that it's an all day, every day kind of thing. However, think about it.